welcome to Daniel Valen's Views of Wrestling. Okay. Last time he hit that effect, it sounded like real life applause, so I hit it again. I'm gonna start using these effects, and because I think it gives me more for my show, but I just came on here to let y'all know something. Whether it's Monday night or Tuesday night or Tuesday afternoon or Monday afternoon, whatever it might be, I'm gonna do Today in History, because I was looking at an email I got and I was reminded, but by looking at the email, one of them was about the recent uploads of some videos on the WWE Network. Could be collections, it could be just new videos or a new video library. So I was looking at an email I got because of Today in History, and it just reminded me that is something that's done in podcasting for wrestling. And it just reminded me that a few times when I did it, it was not just fun, but I think listeners liked it, so I'm going to try to do that. However, because this is November and the original Monday Nitro episode, the first episode, Monday Nitro, aired in early September, then I'm going to have to do that, like, say, a Wednesday or a Thursday, either night or afternoon on here. I will, however, talk about Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes this Wednesday, because that's the next chapter to talk about in the Ultimate Ric Flair Collection DVD. And last night I recorded a new episode on Blog Talk Radio where I would talk about the Raw episodes, and I would most likely, I think I'm going to do that in a few minutes, or I'm going to set it up in a few minutes, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to Blog Talk Radio at about, say, 10 o'clock or 10:15. And when I realize I need to do something either new, or when I realize I need to let y'all know what I'm going to do that is either currently not a part of my format, then I need to make a video, let y'all know. So that's why I came on here. I've always been a big fan of pay-per-views, so whether it's Survivor Series or Royal Rumble in January, WrestleMania in April, or when I was growing up watching WCW, we would always rent the Starrcade videotapes, and I remember ordering the Starrcade pay-per-view of not just whenever. Let me restate that. I shouldn't say not just whenever. Let me restate that. We ordered the first time I ever saw Starrcade on pay-per-view, and it was probably the only time on live pay-per-view was 1999, I believe, when Kevin Nash. No, let me look at the network. At the network libraries, because they have their own pay-per-view library too. And before I do that, I just saw on the WWE app how for Veterans Day, you had superstars who served in the military. I know that Sergeant Slaughter did in real life, and so did Road Dogg Jesse James. I had no idea that Diesel, aka Kevin Nash, did. That part is surprising to me. So let's see. Road Dogg, Zeb Coulter, Steven Cutler, who is in NXT, and I believe one of his members of a group he's part of called the Forgotten Sons. He is not just a part of the military, and he was in the Marines, but so is probably the leader of the Forgotten Sons, because he has leadership abilities, and that is Jackson Riker, who TNA fans will remember him wrestling as Gunner in TNA. He was in the Marines also. He was actually a Lance Corporal when he was released from the Marines. And another person who was in the military was Jesse Ventura. U.S. Navy. Randy Orton was dishonorably discharged from the USMC, so that's why you don't hear a lot about him. And just like Sergeant Slaughter's gimmick, the real person was in the USMC also. Montez Ford, I don't really know who that is. But he was in Junior ROTC in 2007. He enlisted in the Marines after he graduated from high school. And he was 2007 Athlete of the Year. Classy Freddie Blassie, another person I had no idea was in the military. He too was in the Navy, and he was a World War II veteran. And he was a petty officer second class when he was discharged. So he went far in the... Well, maybe... I don't know how far he went, but I think that's close to being as far as most people want to get outside of being a CPO. It's close to being chief petty officer, so I think that's pretty good. Kevin Nash, this is why I hid this, because I didn't know what he did in the Marines. All I knew before this was that he played college basketball and played in Europe, and that's what he was doing when he got into the professional wrestling business. And he also joined the 202nd Military Police Company, and he was stationed at a NATO facility. Then, of course, he returned to the United States and emerged as one of the top big men of his generation. Lacey Evans, I knew she was a Marine. She's on NXT and she was in the first ever Mae Young Classic. That's basically she wrestles. They made they took her uniform, her Marine uniform, and made her wrestling gear out of that. So her character is based after real life Marine experience. And I knew about Perry Saturn being, I believe he was an Army Ranger. Let's see this to be honest about it. He was 17. Yeah, he was an Army Airborne Ranger. And when he got out of the Army, he became a professional wrestler under trained under the legendary Killer Kowalski, who, by the way, also trained Triple H, the late Chyna, and Shawn X-Pac Waltman, along with others. Verne Gagne, who trained Ric Flair, he was he entered the Call of Duty in the USMC himself. No wonder he was so tough. And he was a leatherneck. And this was for a year he was a leatherneck. And it was at the end of World War II. He went back to the University of Minnesota, became a successful NCAA amateur wrestler before beginning his pro wrestling career in 1949 in the NWA. Corporal Kirchner, don't really know him. But he displayed pride in his service and competed in the WWE also. He had a memorable victory against Nikolai Volkov in a flag match at WrestleMania 2. Before that, he was a paratrooper. He enlisted as a paratrooper with the elite 82nd Airborne Division out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He spent the remainder of his teenage years leaping out of airplanes and training for intense combat situations. Although he never went into battle, the young corporal gained the mental and physical tenacity of a soldier and used his skills to compete in WWE Stampede Wrestling in Japan. Now that I read that, let me go back to my what I was going to look at was WCW pay-per-views, and I believe 1999 was the year, but I could be mistaken. No, it's 1998. In the year Starrcade 1998, the semi-main event before Kevin Nash went against, I believe, it was before Kevin Nash challenged Goldberg for the heavyweight title, which, of course, he eventually defeated. It's when he defeated Goldberg, the first person to ever do that. And, yeah, and Eric Bischoff took on Ric Flair. That's why I remember the most from that was how that was the most believable storyline out of all the matches. And then I found out in his Ric Flair's book, Dad told me when I was about 15 years old that was the most reality-based storyline they had at the time in that pay-per-view. So I remember being excited for that, and also really, really shocked, really, really surprised. Not that Goldberg lost, but the way he lost, and I remember thinking, what just happened? I understood he lost. That part wasn't lost on me, but how he lost. I did not know what Scott Hall used, and then we found out later on it was a security guard's weapon to calm people down. That's when we found out it's called the stun gun, and I remember it literally broke. I guess Scott Hall, when he used it against him, I guess he didn't realize what he had done or the level he had done it with. So it just broke on him. Then we found out from one of their security guards that was on the payroll at the time pressed the button just to show what happens when you press it. It was like, that's why he was so affected by it so severely. But what I remember the most from this pay-per-view was they were supposed to have a match between Hall and Bigelow. Never happened. And I remember that saying he must have not shown up on time, so I remember the second match was not just unannounced, but I don't even know how far into the pay-per-view, I don't even know if it was planned. After the triangle, as they called it at the time, Cruiserweight title match where Billy Kidman pinned Juventud Guerrera, I remember Kidman being fussed about by Eddie Guerrero, or Eddie Guerrero fussing at how Mysterio nor Juventud Guerrera could get the job done, so Kidman challenged him to a match right then and there, and that was the first time I ever saw, to my recollection, Bunkhouse Buck and Dirty Dick Slater were the first people to wrestle in street clothes. This was the first time I ever saw a person who I was used to seeing in tights wrestle in street clothes.
Side of my chair. On the side, they got a bag of brownies. Make sure they don't stay in here. Put in the kitchen when you go.
And I really think it was not just a great way to stretch time or to fill time, but I think that it helped keep from I think it helped keep the card from boring the audience or from disappointing the audience, because even though Bigelow and Scott Hall were two of the best, they had, like, for instance, two big powerhouses go against each other that couldn't move, that would have really ruined it. So I think it was a great maneuver. But anyway, I just wanted to share that story, saying how much I enjoy pay-per-views. Survivor Series. I'll give one story. 2002. 2002 was a time when I was actually not supposed to be watching the WWF, because it was still in the Attitude Era. What I remember was how interesting it was, because Eric Bischoff was general manager of Raw, so I was amazed at how well of a job he did as GM, and his idea for the Elimination Chamber. I remember what we call the announcement of it, and I remember thinking how unique that was, and when I think of Survivor Series, I think about not just the elimination tag team matches, but I think about it's really hard to say. Oh yeah, what I think about is how it used to be, just like Starrcade. It used to be done specifically on Thanksgiving. So what I think about is how we really don't usually see a lot of Thanksgiving shows anymore for wrestling. So I'm curious to see if they do anything to celebrate Thanksgiving, because the only show that is going to be airing on Thanksgiving night is Impact, and that is stationed. The office is stationed in Canada, and I don't, because they celebrate Thanksgiving months before we do. So I'm just curious to see if they even do anything to celebrate Thanksgiving, that company. So that's what I think about, is the Thanksgiving holiday when I think about Survivor Series. So for the rest of the month, I'm going to be talking about Survivor Series pay-per-views, the ones that I really enjoyed, like 1993, that led to the Survivor Series 1993 pay-per-view, the Hart family versus Shawn Michaels and his Knights. That's what I'm going to be talking about. There are pay-per-views like that. I believe Survivor Series 92 had Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, and his good friend Mike Rotunda and the Warlord teaming with Ric Flair to go against their rivals. And that is another pay-per-view I want to talk about. So I'm going to be talking, because it is Thanksgiving month, I'm going to be talking about Survivor Series, and we'll be talking about Starrcade also, but mainly I'm going to be talking about Survivor Series. And like I said before, the purpose of Survivor Series was the multiple elimination matches. One thing that I think made it lose its identity after a while was having traditional title matches instead of leaving that for Royal Rumble and the and pay-per-views like that, where it was more important. And by the way, I just thought of this. When I started this podcast, even though it's on another service at the time, I wanted to talk specifically about the first ever brand split, which was started in 2002 after the end of the WCW and ECW storyline against the WWE, which Scott Steiner said later on. He didn't really mention that, but when you take a look at how when you take a look at how the tag team, the Dudley Boys, talk about all the titles they've won and how they were the last team to hold ECW and WCW titles. He said it didn't really matter because they weren't a part of WCW, and that any team winning those titles at that point was just for storyline. It wasn't on WCW itself as WWE. So when you look at stories like that, it's very easy to see how after a while they lost their meaning of what Survivor Series was really all about. However, after a while they even lost sight of what Royal Rumble was about, because they would have, at first, it was an endurance test, but when it became so popular that that they had to keep up with WCW, that's why it became automatic for the winners of the Battle Royal to get a title shot. Because I believe that's what happened with World War III and WCW, but if memory serves me correct, the first World War III, what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about World War III because it was in November. And it started in 1995, which is part of Monday Nitro versus Monday Night Raw. So what I remember about that pay-per-view, besides Johnny B. Bad versus Diamond Dallas Page Part 2, which led to about 2 or 3 more matches after that. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the storyline that led to that. I'm going to talk about, say, I think I can do a full episode or talk about Monday Nitro versus Monday, or I could talk about Monday Nitro versus Monday Night Raw and talk about that storyline leading into World War III. So that's what I'll do. So tomorrow I'll talk about the Monday Nitro versus Monday Night Raw, and because I have a 2-hour limit on this, I think I can do about 3 Raw vs. Nitro episodes of that. And then I can talk about I'm sorry, I just realized something, so I'm gonna have to editorialize myself. I'm not sure if I can do the amount of time that I need to for Raw versus Nitro, what I can do is read the results of the pay-per-views that happened, and then talk about the First World War III. But first, I would have to talk about the Fall Brawl show, the show that happened before World War III, Halloween Havoc, and the WWE shows pay-per-views that happened before Fall Brawl and before Halloween Havoc. So that's what I'll do. So I break down matches that separate and the storylines that separated the shows, and why I believe Raw didn't last in the ratings in those days, which I don't even know if they did or not, but I'm not even sure the first time they lost in the ratings. But I will talk about the breakdown, what happened. I'll try my best not to take too long on it, because these are important shows from a podcast. But I will talk about Survivor Series. That part, I promise you I'll do that Friday. And I want to say thank y'all, and I don't know what else to say. So, what I will say before I end this is thank y'all. Thank y'all to everybody who listens, to everybody who may even leave comments on this video. Thank y'all. And goodbye.